Okay, welcome back. This is going to be the last section of Romans that goes with the sort of first part of Romans, of the four big parts of Romans. So we'll be looking at Romans chapter 4, verse 13 through 22. It'd be good to backtrack and read the whole section that starts talking about Abraham. So if when you pause, read Romans 3:31 through 4:22, and then come back. Welcome back. So this section of Romans, we're going to kind of see kind of why and how Abraham was justified. We saw that he was earlier, but why and how as a sort of key example for Paul. So the it says here that for the promise, and that word I want to zoom in on, for the promise to Abraham and his offspring, they would be heir of the world, did not come through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. And here, the concept promise is what's going to matter throughout the book, rest of the book of Romans. That it doesn't come by a thing we do, by an action that we do. It is God's end that matters. It's His promise that we bank on, not our action. That His promise is rock solid, and God's faithful. God is faithful even when we are not. And so banking on that promise is what matters. And you receive that as faith, not as through the law or through a work. That is why. So God promises first that you'll be the father of many nations before Abraham had done anything. And then he believed the promise, and that's counted to him as righteousness. So for Paul, that's sort of God's promise first, Abraham's faith, and then God's righteousness kind of following through it all. So that is why it depends on faith, in order that the promise may rest on grace, gift on God's end, and be guaranteed to all his offspring. If it wasn't a gift, it wouldn't be guaranteed. We'd screw it up. Not only to the adherent of the law, but also the one who shares the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. So this is again building off the idea that Abraham is the father of all who have faith. And if you share that faith and belief of God, of the God of the universe, which turns out to have been Abraham's God, and when it says, "I have made you father of many nations," in the presence of God in whom we believed, who gives life to the dead, and this is actually why does Paul believe that? Because he's seen the risen Christ. So this is Paul's own testimony, kind of coming in here. This is the God who gives life to the dead and calls into existence of things that do not exist, that God's a creator. So this is God who is able and willing. And that's going to be kind of the important thing here when we bank on the promise of God, is that God is able to keep his promises. He's able to call the world into existence. He's able to bring life to the dead. He's able to do that and far more. And so our trust in God isn't just in his character, but it's also in his competence. And God is competent. And that's what we're going to see here, that Abraham had belief in this, even when against all odds. In hope, he believed against hope, that he should become the father of many nations, as he had been told, so shall your offspring be, as numerous as the stars in the sky or sands on the beach. He did not weaken in faith when he considered his own body, which was as good as dead. Nice way to put it, since he was about 100 years old, and when he considered the barrenness of Sarah's womb. So this says Abraham hopes against hope, that he has a hope beyond all hope, and this promise of God, that God is able. And so this is the doggedness and faith and the doggedness of trust. Having that is where that's the faith that you have, that you rely on this even when you don't have it, and that you come back around to it. Even Abraham tried to take matters on his own hands when he uh, fathered a child through his handmaiden instead of through Sarah, as the promise had. And he had, with Hagar, he had Ishmael. So he tried to do it his own hand, but no, God is able, and he does his promise anyway, even when he did it, Abraham did his own way. That's the sort of trust in God to be able to do it beyond all odds, beyond what you see. So that's very important to see. This is that when we say God, our God reigns, that the kingdom is at hand, that he is saving the world, and we look around and we see the world a mess, Abraham saw his body as good as dead. It's to remember God's goodness and his competence together as we go through this. So, so no unbelief made him waver concerning the promise of God, but he grew strong in his faith and he gave glory to God, fully convinced that God was able to do what he was promised. That's why his faith was counted unto him as righteousness. That he is rested in the promise. And this is where I'll leave you for if you want a break. We're going to be a little bit for our next set of videos. Um, making these for a class I'm teaching, and so we have a break coming up. But I mean, it is resting in the promise, and not just that doesn't mean an action. It means as you go through your day, as you do the actions that God puts in front of you, you have His promise that's before you. And so that's where I'm going to leave it. If you look at the next line, the reason we're cutting off here, you have this sort of another pivot here. But the words is counted as righteous is not for just him, but for ours. That's going to introduce kind of the next set of arguments in that part of Romans. So we're going to cut it off here, and that'll be it. So thanks.